Welcome to episode 114 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. It's February 22nd, 1866. It's 7 p.m. in London, and the most important thing happening in English football tonight isn't a match, it's a meeting. Because 3 years after the Football Association was born, the game is still fragile. Clubs are still arguing about what football even means. Someone carrying, someone hacking. Someone marks in fair catches and a free kick for catching the ball cleanly. Others want a game that is all feet, no hands. A game you can play against anyone, anywhere, without a fight breaking out halfway through. And in this room, in the Freemasons Tavern on Great Queen Street, a building that's gone now, the FA is going to do something that sounds tiny, almost trivial. They're going to put a tape across the goalposts, and they're going to change offside. 2 edits, 2 lines of text, and they end up shaping a global sport. So let's zoom out to the how did we get here segment, because to understand why a strip of tape mattered, you have to remember just how unfinished the game still was. In the 1850s and early 1860s, football was not one game, it was a family of games, different schools, different towns, different rules. Some codes were basically rugby with extra kicking. Some were dribbling games with almost no handling. And when teams met, they'd argue over and over before they even kicked off. That's the chaos Ebenezer Cobb Morley tried to solve. If you remember episode 20, the solicitor who wrote the game, this is his world. He helps pull the FA together in 1863, and the first laws are written with one aim, make the game playable between clubs. But those first laws are not yet the modern game, not even close. Take the goal itself. In 1863, there's no crossbar, no tape, no height limit. If the ball goes between the posts, it can count, even if it's 6 feet high or 16 feet, which means every lofted ball is a courtroom argument. Did it go between? Did it go over? What even is over when there's nothing across the top? Now take offside. The early FA offside is brutally strict. If the ball is kicked, any teammate closer to the opponent's goal line than the kicker is out of play. In plain English, you can't hang around upfield. Forward passing is basically suffocated, and the game becomes a low, compact dribbling contest. And if you want distance, you punt and chase. And in the background, there's the identity crisis. Are we association football or are we rugby football? That split is already happening. But the border between the two games is still being drawn, line by line, which takes us back inside the Freemasons Tavern. It's Thursday evening, February 22nd, 1866. The president is in the chair. The secretary reads out correspondence, including letters from outside London, where clubs are watching the FA closely and deciding whether this code is worth joining. There's debate about violence, about clubs hitting at the ball, about the whole ugly culture of hacking and throttling that some codes still tolerate. And there's another tension too, membership. Should non-members be allowed to play under association rules, or does that dilute what the FA is trying to build? And then the meeting moves to the proposed alteration in the laws. First, the goal. The new law says the posts are 8 yards apart, and now there will be a tape stretched across them, 8 feet from the ground. And a goal will only be a goal if the ball passes under that tape. This is more than tidiness. This is the invention of a target. It creates a visible, agreed, measurable boundary. It turns goal from opinion into geometry. You can imagine why it matters. A crowd can see the tape. Players can see the tape. Everyone knows what they're aiming at. And suddenly, the sport has a universal answer to the oldest argument in football. Was that a goal? Second, the throw-in. It sounds minor, but it's a philosophical statement. The ball is out. One player throws it back in. But he can't just throw it to himself and sprint away with it. The ball must touch the ground and someone else must play it before he can. That's the game-choosing teamwork over loopholes. A small rule that nudges football toward flow instead of trickery. And third, offside. And here comes the compromise. The FA keeps the idea that you shouldn't be camping by the goal, but they loosen the chokehold. Now, if there are at least 3 opponents between you and their goal, you are not out of play. 3 opponents. A simple number that opens space, encourages passing, and gives attackers a reason to move high without being instantly illegal. It doesn't create modern football overnight, The game is still dribble heavy, still direct, but it's the first real crack in the wall. A rule that quietly says, attacking is allowed. And then there's the weird one, the one that reminds you how close to rugby still is. What happens when the ball goes behind the goal line? Today we have goal kicks and corner kicks and a whole ecosystem of restarts. In 1866, the FA is still experimenting. If the defending side touches the ball, they kick it off from the goal line. But if the attacking side gets there first, after it has gone behind, they score a touchdown. And if the match ends without a goal, the side with more touches down wins. That's not modern football. That's a fossil, a visible trace of the sport's shared ancestry with rugby, still embedded in the code. And you may recall this from last week's episode, number 108, about the Uten Cup, which was decided on such touches down, or rouge as they were called. And right around that same edge, something else disappears. The fair catch, catching the ball cleanly to claim a free kick, is removed from the laws. Hands are being pushed out of the game. The border is hardening. So what does February 22nd, 1866 actually do? It doesn't reinvent football in one night, but it locks in a direction. The tape across the post is the beginning of precision. It's a small piece of technology, basically a ribbon, but it standardizes the most sacred moment in the sport. It's the ancestor of the crossbar, the net, the goal line camera, and the VAR decision that pauses your heart. The offside change is the beginning of attack. It makes the game more expansive, more strategic. It's the first recognition that a sport needs tension between defense and offense, not a rule that simply smothers forward play. And the removal of the fair catch, the awkward persistence of touchdowns, the arguments about hacking, all of it is the sport choosing its identity. Association football is walking away from rugby football, step by step, clause by clause. And here's the long arc, because this meeting doesn't just affect 1866, it echoes forward. That 3 opponents offside rule stays for decades. Then in 1925, the number drops from 3 to 2, and the sport explodes into goals. Tactics change, formations change, careers change. The tape eventually becomes a wooden crossbar. The goal becomes a rectangle you can recognize in any stadium on earth. And the experimental touchdowns vanish as football builds the modern restart system, goal kicks, corner kicks, throw-ins, and free kicks. You can draw a straight line from this room to everything that comes later, the FA Cup, the leagues, international football, the World Cup, the global game. Not because the tape is magical, but because a shared rulebook is. Because football's superpower isn't just that simple, it's that it's standardized. A kid in Buenos Aires, or Lagos, or Seoul, or Copenhagen can play the same game because, once upon a time, a handful of men agreed on a tape across 2 posts. And there's one more human detail worth holding onto. This is also the night Morley steps back as secretary. The man who had been the engine of codification is praised for what he has done and replaced in the job as the FA keeps institutionalizing itself beyond any one person. This is how rules become a system and how a system becomes sport. So as we close, 3 things to take away from February 22nd, 1866. First, football didn't become global by being born perfect. It became global by being edited again and again in rooms like this. Second, offside is not a nuisance rule. It's the steering wheel of the sport. Change the number and you change the entire geometry of football. And third, sometimes the biggest revolutions are quiet. A tape across the post doesn't look like history, but it turns chaos into clarity, and clarity into a game the world can share. On this day in 1866, the FA walked into the Freemasons' tavern with a messy, unfinished sport, and walked out with a tape across the posts, a looser offside law, and a game that finally started to look like soccer. That's all for episode 114 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. Before we close, a teaser, because tomorrow we jump from Victorian tape and offside compromises to Jose Mourinho and a statistic that borders on the impossible. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help it climb the charts by rating it, sharing it with friends, give it 5 stars. It really helps. And if you have a great idea for the show, email me at otd@17lawsguy.com. See you tomorrow.